Hi, hello, and welcome to another episode of The Dunker Spot. We are part of 342 Productions. I am your host, Nekias Duncan, and joining me as always is my co-host, Steve Jones Jr. Steve, how are you doing, sir?
Aha, feeling good, feeling great, happy to be here, excited to be here. Thank you, Dunkers, for once again embracing your bounce. Duncan Nason, let's ride YouTube. Hi, hello. Drop that thumbs up for me. You are important. Thank you for your support. Nekias, the playoffs keep playoffing. It's time to hoop it up.
It is indeed time to hoop it up. We are going to be digging into all 8 of these series, or 7 of the series that are still going, and then a hat tip to the Minnesota Timberwolves to kick things off. But before we get into playoff talk, very quickly on the W front, because we got some news on Sunday that stopped us in our collective tracks. Candace Parker announcing her retirement after 16 years. We were watching Sixers-Knicks on Sunday, trying to soak that one in, see what's going on here. We were en route to watching Jalen Brunson make New York Knicks history in the game. Knicks won. We're going to talk about the game a little bit later. And then we get the Candace Parker Instagram post saying that she is done. And just on a general note, what an icon Candace Parker is and was, or was and is rather. And I just think about everything that she has meant to like my own personal basketball fandom. As you know, Steve, you poke at me all the time, like versatile players or taller players that can do a bunch of things just tend to get me going. Watching what Candace Parker was able to do at the 4 and the 5, a grab and go threat, a true playmaking hub, post score, isolation score, could stretch it from deep. Even once some of the injuries started to pile on with her, she was still a walking mismatch on the offensive end. And you think about just the general impact that she's had on not basketball overall, but women's basketball in particular. With her style of play, the crossover appeal that she's had, we're seeing her ball on one hand and talk on TNT on the other. Just a really special talent, a really special person, a special figure in basketball. And as someone that covered the Aces pretty closely this past season, like getting to pick her brain a little bit, talk to her about entry passing and screening, but also just seeing how the impact that she had on and off the floor for the Aces, pouring into Asia and pouring into the other posts on the team. Even when she went down, seeing how active she was on the sidelines, like she is just someone that just breathes basketball and just adds a level of professionalism and positivity wherever she goes. Like I'm just going to miss that. I'm going to miss watching her play basketball. I know she's not stepping away from basketball overall. We're going to see and hear plenty of her. But it seems wild that this is the way that it ended. With her Aces season being cut short to injury, not being able to return for the finals, and now we just get the Instagram post, which she did it on her own terms, but it would have been nice for her to get like a real send-off worthy of who she is and what she's been to the W and to basketball as a whole. But just a salute to Candace Parker before we get going.
One of one. That's the first thing that came to mind. One of one. Only player to have won Rookie of the Year and MVP in WNBA history. The first player.
Same year.
The first player in WNBA history to win a title with 3 different franchises. And I'm pretty sure the only W player to win a Rookie of the Year, All-Star MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, WNBA Finals MVP, and a WNBA MVP. And shout out to Across the Timeline and the fact that so many of their great historical tweets end up getting tied back to Candace Parker. Most points in a WNBA debut with 34. The only player in W history with a 5x5 game. You mentioned the on-court impact, the ability to score in so many different ways, attack and transition, the passing, take the space, there's a 3, now it's a post-up, now Candace Parker's getting the screen and attacking, reading the defense on a pop, the defense, my goodness, the defense, the hedges, the recovery, just being everywhere, shutting things down, constantly evolving and impacting the game. It was terrifying. The flashes of what you saw with Candace while she was with the Aces. And her impact on the game of basketball is something I've truly felt over the last day or so. Not that it didn't exist before. I don't think it was appreciated as much as it should have been, but I just been feeling the weight of it. It's like I'm 37, right? Mm-hmm. Watching Candace Parker play basketball is something that's just been baked in for almost 2 decades. And for Candace Parker to break the mold with that kind of play style. Like, I go back, I was 19 years old, Nekias, at Arizona State. And quick side note, shout out to ASU. Loved watching that team play. But it's 2006. Enrolls number 5 Tennessee, Nekias. They were undefeated. ASU was undefeated. It was like number 5 against number 11. ASU won like 26 straight home games. Here comes Candace Parker with 25 and 10 in 30 minutes. Tennessee wins. And you felt it from that moment on. And beyond just the on-court play, I think of the post-game presser in 2021 after the title and the words you can live by, the message of work hard, give energy, and the world will give it back to you. You don't have to yell from the rooftops who you are and what you do. Let time tell and just enjoy the moment. And so I hope Candace Parker is able to enjoy the moment. I hope Candace Parker is able to find peace in this moment. And I hope that she knows and realizes just how much she impacted the game of basketball. Thank you.
Very well said. Very well said. And just very quickly, 3-time champion, 2-time MVP, 10 all-W teams, 7-time All-Star, but that's with the caveat that during Olympic years, they just didn't have All-Star games. So fair to assume that she would have had more than 7 All-Star appearances if the games were being had. Finals MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, 2-time gold medalist, top 20 in career points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. And don't even get me started on the college resume. Like just one of the greatest basketball players of all time. And I hope she continues to receive flowers because she more than deserves them. Then very quickly on the NBA front, a couple of awards that were announced over the weekend. Well, heading into the weekend, Stephen Curry is your clutch player of the year, led the NBA in clutch points. 55% on twos, 46% on threes, and 95% at the line during clutch time this season. And Mark Daigneault being named Coach of the Year, a 17-win improvement from last year. The Thunder were 3rd in offense and 4th in defense this year per Clean the Glass. Last year, they were 16th in offense and 16th in defense. So got better on both ends of the floor, won a lot more. Makes sense why Mark Daigneault would be the Coach of the Year. Any thoughts on either of the award winners before we move into playoff talk?
It makes sense. Steph Curry led the NBA in points, 3-pointers, and field goals made in the clutch, so I get it. No shock there with Mark Daigneault. Done a phenomenal job in Oklahoma City. We've talked about it all year long to get that team to believe in what they do, to execute the way they do night in, night out. You're seeing the payoff for what they've done in the playoffs. Trust his players as they grow, not sacrificing their beliefs in their system for short-term success, making sure to build it out the right way. That team defends every night. That team moves the ball. That team keeps pressure on you, drive and kick. You add the cutting, make the adjustments. It's a tough squad to deal with. And they are ahead of schedule. And a lot of that goes to how it's been built and how Mark Daigneault's been able to get the best out of his guys. So I get it. Quick question for you, if I could be respectfully messy.
Sure.
Going back to Clutch Player of the Year, what got you more, the Jason Tatum first place vote or Malik Monk third place vote?
Probably the Tatum first place vote seems a little bit rich. Like, it's not like the Celtics had a large sample of clutch games to begin with. So, like, that's part of it. But, like, also, terrifying player to see across from you with the game on the line because of the blend of the shot making you get into, the drives, the improved playmaking. So, like, you don't want to see him. I just at no point during the season I feel like he was the NBA's best clutch player. So the first place vote just seems a little rich for me. Like Malik vote for third place is a little rich for me as well, but at least that's a third place vote. That's just him on the ballot. Tatum first seems kind of tough to. I don't know about that one.
Can I ask a secondary question?
Sure.
Joe Mazzulla and Tom Thibodeau got the same amount of first place votes. What do you think?
It's pretty interesting, and I'm glad you circled back to Coach of the Year because, like, the only comment that I really had, no surprise again for Mark Daigneault winning, I don't have any complaints. I was a little surprised that it was as much of a runaway as it was for Daigneault. I think 89 of the 99 first place votes went to him. I figured he would get like 55 or 60. And so, like, he still wins, but there's at least more of a cluster. I wasn't expecting the full-blown runaway, though. Especially with Orlando flirting with a top 4 seed.
I think there was a lot of good cases, but again, sometimes when it comes to award time, it's easy to check a box off. OKC was this last year. OKC's this year. Here you go. And more people just opted for that.
Yeah. So, that was my only real surprise there. Tibbs and Joe Mazzulla getting the same amount of first place votes. It's interesting. Both worthy in very different contexts. The Celtics were pretty dominant during the regular season. The Knicks, top 3 seed, despite all of the injuries and roster turnover that they had to deal with. So I understand why both would be viewed highly this year. So more so on the interesting scale to me. All right.
Before you go.
Oh, go ahead.
Before we talk to the playoffs, before you flow and segue us into what we're going to do, this is the fun part of the playoffs, Nekias. We're getting into elimination games. 3-1s, 2-2s. The team's already been sent home. Potentially more, because we are recording on Monday. But this is the interesting part of the playoffs. Because at some point in the series, folks, it stops being about how good your team is and can you solve this very specific thing right now. The playoffs are hard. Regular season, you're working to build, you're finding your versatility, you prepare for this time of year, but now it's here. And you're facing a team whose whole goal is to take what you do well and either take it away or make it as hard as possible for you to do. That's the bit over and over and over again. To the point where either you can't figure it out and make us pay, or we win because you couldn't. The matchups changed, the adjustments changed, the problems changed. You could be a really well-built team and run into one team that just has the one thing you cannot solve. So just keep that in mind as we talk about these teams, and everyone talks about the future and the failures, and it's hard. Winning in the playoffs is hard. Go ahead, bud.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Wise words from Steve, someone who literally has NBA playoff experience. So take heed of those. We will transition to the one series that ended. We'll start with a hat tip before getting into some analysis of the other series. The Minnesota Timberwolves, 2 games since the last time we were on YouTube. A 126-109 win in Game 3 over the Suns. A 122-116 win against the Suns last night. As again, recording on a Monday afternoon. It's about 2 Eastern right now. Not only do the Wolves win the series, the Wolves sweep the Phoenix Suns after the Suns won all 3 of their regular season matchups. And as I kind of look at the Game 4 and also just zoom out for what the series was, the story for me is just the maturation of Anthony Edwards. Like, I think it starts there. I was just so impressed with how he handled the series. And like heading in, I started with, I'm optimistic about Minnesota in this series because I just do not believe he's going to perform like he did during the regular season series. I don't think that he's seen anything super crazy that he can't solve. Ultimately, I felt like the shot making would bounce around. He'd be able to have an impact inside the arc. We go from there. And to watch him just kind of dissect what Phoenix was trying to do to him and just poke at those coverages, poke at the help, Minnesota also trying to counter what Phoenix was trying to do help-wise throughout the series. It was a lot of fun watching him just kind of dial it back and then ramp it up when the situation called for it. So I kind of will dig deeper into that shortly, but I start with Anthony Edwards and then just a general hat tip to Minnesota's defense in this series. I really enjoyed watching Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jaden McDaniels, and Anthony Edwards against Bradley Beal was fun. Rudy Gobert at the rim, also holding up on switches better than I'm sure a lot of people expected. Karl-Anthony Towns fighting for his life sometimes in space, but ultimately doing enough to stay in front of and contest Kevin Durant jumpers, particularly early on in the series. Watching this team fly around, the rare occasion that they did put 2 on someone, whether that was Kevin Durant on a post-up or if they went higher up against pick and rolls with Devin Booker, watching them rotate out of that was a whole lot of fun. Just what a connected group, what a rangy group, and just a really impressive effort through 4 games in this one.
It was an incredibly impressive series for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think the number one thing for me, I'll take my L. I thought Phoenix might have had their number. I thought they were going to be one of the teams that could challenge their defense in a different way, and Minnesota made every single adjustment they needed to. They answered every question you may have had about them, and they did it in 4 games. There's value to that. And this is a team that is confident. They play with an identity. The identity is based on defense, but they also work on the other end offensively. That's really valuable this time of year. And I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is they defended with conviction. When they had to rotate, they flew around. Otherwise, we're going to mix in these switches to disrupt what you want to do, Phoenix. Nothing truly felt automatic for Minnesota. They could mix in unders. They could swap their coverages. We're okay with a big on Kevin Durant. You want to go to your off-ball actions? That's fine. We're okay if Rudy Gobert catches or switches, and we work to contain and help that way. Offensively, Anthony Edwards did a whole lot. I thought he was great this whole series. A lot of loud plays, a lot of highlight plays. The playmaking was so important. We've talked about it before, but with Phoenix being locked into showing early help, showing multiple bodies, for him to understand when to drive, when to kick was huge. Seeing the nail help, kicking it when Phoenix was loaded up early, the times where he would work to attack early in the clock or quick before they get loaded up, getting two on the ball and recognizing, okay, I can engage the defense. I can find that corner skip pass, making quick decisions when Phoenix went to switch and double, which is a testament to Anthony Edwards that him and Minnesota played so well. They went to switch and double. He kept making the right read. He kept making the right play. He kept opening things up for that offense. And that's on top of the shot making. And so once he hit that blend, it was really tough to deal with, especially in the fourth quarter. He just had a lot of answers for that playoff game plan, and that always impresses me with a young player. Karl-Anthony Towns being able to hold up defensively, being able to contain and contest, being able to post up, catching the spots he wanted to, score in his areas, quicker decisions for most of the time. The switching allowed him to get some deep seals. He could still impact when he's in at the 5. So if you have Cat and he's able to hurt the bigs, hurt the wings, post up, drive, hit threes, it's tough. And Mike Conley stepped up. His scoring, his activity defensively, timely baskets. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was really good on both ends. Jaden McDaniels driving against closeouts. Everyone knew their job and executed. So it's a salute to the Minnesota Timberwolves for advancing, taking care of business. I hope Chris Finch is all right. That did not look good.
Yeah, that was scary.
But what a great team effort.
Great team effort indeed. You mentioned the Anthony Edwards skip passes. I told you last night I was going to make sure I have a skip pass stat ready for you on the pod today. 11 skip passes for Anthony Edwards in the first round series. He had 14 last postseason, including the play-in. So to see that ramp up in a 4-game sample, and again, just the different coverages that Phoenix threw at him, being able to make those reads was very impressive for me. And then this is, as you mentioned, the switch and double. Something that popped for me, and something that you talked about during the second half of Game 3, and it kind of permeated through Game 4 as well. It was technically the switchiest game of the series for Phoenix in Game 4. They did switch a lot more. They were switching Nurk very early in that game. In particular, we saw a lot of KD at the 5. We saw a lot of switching there. And again, this is where I appreciated Ant's patience, but also some of the scheme things. Not necessarily the fanciest of things, but Ant recognizing they're switching against me. Let me get this early screen from Jaden McDaniels. You're going to switch that out. We're going to have a good shooter one pass away. As Jaden McDaniels cuts, now let me attack as he's cutting and moving this guy out the way. The nail help isn't as secure. I can get all the way downhill now. So him just picking his spots in terms of when he wanted to attack, when to attack, I was impressed with. So I really enjoyed Ant in this one. Very quickly on the Phoenix side, I think everyone's going to be doing some variation of where do they go from here. What did you feel like was their biggest problem in this series?
What was their biggest problem in this particular series?
Yes.
They couldn't, I mean, it's the same problem they've had for the majority of the season. They couldn't find the right blend offensively. They couldn't poke at Minnesota's defense in a way that would make them blink or change anything. In pick and roll, did it ever feel like Minnesota was far off from what they wanted to do? You know, once Minnesota decided we're just not going to put 2 on the ball and pick and roll, that impact was lessened. And they had to make shots to try and get Minnesota to change what they wanted to do. They didn't necessarily hit those shots. They didn't have those gaps. And so you never advanced to that next level of what Phoenix can bring to the table. Mm-hmm. When it came to the off-ball movement, when they did get to it, how fast were the cuts? How much did Minnesota's physicality bother them? Did they stick with it? How many times did they flow from side to side? Or was that ball movement dictated on a pick and roll read or a double team or a drive? How many drives did they get? It just didn't feel like they put as much pressure as they could have on Minnesota. And once Rudy Gobert was comfortable switching, once Cat was comfortable against KD, what did you have? Mm-hmm. That's pretty much it for me. And then defensively, you stuck with your game plan. You showed early help against Ant. You tried things? You tried switching double. You tried, being 2 on the ball. You tried KD at the 5. What else was left defensively? Did you tap all the buttons you could have?
Yeah, to your point, it just didn't feel like they could draw 2 enough. And I think when we saw Phoenix at their best overall this season and within this particular matchup, it was either them running their actions with more juice and forcing Minnesota to react, or you got some of the insane shot making to the point where Minnesota decided we have to send an extra body just to get this guy all out of rhythm. We have to get him off rhythm. And then Phoenix was able to play out of that. And with some of the offensive concerns that we saw in Minnesota during the regular season series, Phoenix was able to just get into some of their transition to early offense stuff too. And without Phoenix being able to bend Minnesota's defense, it just kind of felt like they were on the back foot pretty much the entire series. You had your pockets, it felt more Phoenix-like. I think this is a comment that you made during Game 3, where the pace was certainly there in the first half of that game. It was this feels more like Phoenix flow. They get into more things. Again, they start experimenting with more switching. Offensively to try to bog Minnesota down, particularly some of their second units. But it never felt like they could really bottle, this is what we're going to do to bother this team, and this is how we're going to put them in rotation consistently. And it just felt like they were kind of on the cusp of being able to do that on either end, but couldn't necessarily nail it. And then once Anthony Edwards started taking over third or fourth quarters, sometimes both, depending on the game, now they got momentum. And now you're pulling the ball out of the basket, and now you are trying to set up things in the half court, which, to your point again, the overall flow wasn't there. Let's say in game 4, I think it was the most that they put Cat in action, went back and counted it between pick and rolls, dribble handoffs, off-ball stuff, and ISOs or post-ups. Cat was put in action 56 times in game 4. And even with that, you saw some of the louder plays. I think play on the left wing, Cat and Rudy had off-ball action. Cat and Rudy kind of botch it. Phoenix gets an easy one from there. So you have some of the louder hiccups, but overall, they still didn't ding Cat enough to where Minnesota had to overreact and really open things up. And it's wild to be talking about the Phoenix offense. Devin Booker had 49 last night. Kevin Durant driving with all kinds of fervor in game 4. It wasn't from a lack of effort from Phoenix in their offense, but ultimately they just couldn't put enough together. And this is how we end up, again, not just a series win for Minnesota, but a series sweep for Minnesota. First series win since 2004, I believe, and first sweep in franchise history against this group. I couldn't be more impressed with what Minnesota was able to put together. So I'll ask very quickly before we move on to the next series. I will tap the hashtag button with Phoenix. What do you think they attempt to do this offseason? Do you think it's just see if we can get some bargaining signs with the vet minimum signings? Or do you feel like a bigger move is coming with them?
Well, number one, they have to navigate that apron. 2, I would just assume, they're lost. So they know what they need going forward. How do they find it is going to be creative. I don't anticipate a massive swing. This ain't really my bag. What do you think?
It's the second apron just makes things tough. The fact that they don't have picks to really throw in deals on top of them not being able to aggregate salaries because they're in the second apron. In a perfect world, Nurk plus Grayson Allen or Grayson Allen plus Nasir Little or Nurk plus Nasir Little, etc. Let's get a mid-sized guy into the lineup and see if we can find a wing on the market or another forward so we can really enhance some of these smaller lineups. Or if we are just going to press the point guard button, let's see if we can find a guy and do that. But because they can't aggregate salaries, that becomes a lot more difficult. So like my best guess is it's free agency. Let's see who we can get on the vet minimum. Let's see if we can hit a home run or at least hit a couple of doubles with some of those signings. Like I'll raise my hand. I was just off with some of the signings that they had. Like I was very, very huge on K Debate's job. And I think I tweeted out some version of if he hits, he's going to be like the steal of the offseason or something in that vein. He didn't make it to the trade deadline with Phoenix. Ultimately, he didn't defend well enough and he didn't hit enough shots for him to really unlock some of the lineup versatility that Phoenix wanted to tap into, which kind of signifies it's hard to do. It's hard to build this way when you don't have that kind of flexibility. And you take all the swings hoping that at least one or two of them hit. And if they don't, you're kind of hamstrung, which puts even more pressure on your top guys to hit. And when you have, at least one of your big three in and out of the lineup pretty much the entire season, it's hard to build rhythm. It's hard to build chemistry. It's hard to build counters that you are just in lockstep with once you get into the postseason. And ultimately, you get into a series like this where you're relying on those guys, and now Grayson Allen goes down. Who do you go to? And so my guess is they try to hit up free agency. Like, I don't think there's a real major trade out there for them. Like, I don't think they're certainly not pressing the Booker button. I don't think they're pressing the KD button. And because of no trade clause, like they just flat out can't press the Bradley Beal button unless a conversation is had. So I think it's going to be free agency swings from there. But again, big salute to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I am excited to see what their next series is going to look like. The Nuggets are up 3-1, so I would assume it's going to be them, but can't rule it out until that series is done. We will move to the East. The Indiana Pacers with a couple of wins over the weekend. A 121-118 victory in the overtime against Milwaukee, and then in Game 4, a 126-113 win over the Bucks. No Giannis yet in this series as he's still recovering, and no Dame in the Game 4 as he's dealing with an Achilles injury. As of recording, it is 2:19 Eastern as we get to this segment of the pod. I have not seen an update on Damian Lillard's status for Game 5. But before projecting forward, what a series this has been for Miles Turner. I think I start there. One, the freaking poster dunk in Game 4. And just him energizing the crowd like the way that he did was a lot of fun to watch. But beyond that, his work with Tyrese as a screener, his work with Andrew Nembhard as a screener, his ability to roll and pop, and the short roll reps in particular, more so earlier in the series than we saw in Game 4. But him diagnosing the floor and mapping the floor out the way that he did in short roll situations is something that I've always been a little fuzzy on with Miles Turner throughout his career. It's kind of gone from general shot profile stuff when he rolls or when he pops to will he see the pass? And then that progression to will he see the pass quickly enough? He's largely nailed those reads throughout this series. And him being able to mix in those jumpers, mix in those drives, mix in those driving kicks, and doing so in a timely fashion has really made an impact on this Indiana offense because they already play extremely fast. They already put Milwaukee on their back foot. They push after misses. They push after turnovers. They push after made baskets. And so Miles being able to flow into some of these high ball screens without fouling and make decisions while Milwaukee is off balance has been very important for them. And as we've seen in Game 3 and Game 4, where Pascal is just dropping 30 easy in the first two games, some of that scoring slows down. Tyrese Halliburton, who I feel like he's gained more comfort as the series gone on, but as Tyrese is trying to find it, being able to get those relief buckets for Miles Turner has also been important. And defensively, Milwaukee's tried to put him in action a lot, both with Dame and even in the Game 4. Let's see if we can move him around. Let's set some of these screens higher up the floor. Let's get some off-ball movement into a Chris Middleton handoff. Let's see if Miles is willing to creep up. If he's in a drop, let's see if we can test it with some middies. Let's see if we can get to the rim on a couple of these. Miles has largely passed the test defensively in this series for me. The block numbers highlighted, but it just felt really solid for Miles Turner. So I think that's probably the biggest story over the past two games. Steve, what's popped for you?
Miles Turner. I mean, you say he's shooting 50% from three in this series on 8.5 attempts.
Insane.
So as here's the thing, Miles Turner's made the Bucks pay all series long. So you mentioned his short roll decision making. You have to think about and tie it into what Milwaukee has tried to do in different parts of this series. They wanted to put Brook on Siakam, and Siakam worked to take that off the table. And you adjust to have Portis on Siakam, you put Brook on Turner, and that's opened things up. It's not just, hey, we're going to drop Miles Turner. You make him pay on the short roll. He's made the right reads. He's been able to roll. He's been able to pop. But also when he's spaced, especially if he's defended by Brook or a big, and Milwaukee's had to rotate so much in this series, they've had to help. He's been able to make them pay when he's spaced as well. So you mentioned how important those baskets are. It ties into just Indiana making them pay. I like even better when he's on the perimeter. They don't have something at first, his ability to pop and get to the next side. And that's putting pressure on Milwaukee's defense that has struggled to maintain their coverages to a degree because Indiana keeps moving the ball. They may decide on one thing and then goes to the other side. Now we have a breakdown. Now Indiana's off to the races. That kind of flow has been really important. So I think Miles Turner's been great. I mean, if you get a chant at home and you continue to make threes after said chant, I think that's pretty cool. Neat story for him, especially considering that he was involved in all of the trade rumors for what felt like forever. So he's been a key impact for that. I think with Tyrese Halliburton, the one thing that I've appreciated in this series is that he has really worked to tilt the Bucks defense. Whatever coverage they've been in, he's working to get them in rotation. He's looking to make the right play. And it's obviously nice for the threes to return, especially with the Bucks going to drop and giving him space and trying to keep pick and rolls on the side. But I've just liked that he's made quick decisions. He's made the right reads. He's helped to start the Bucks having to be in rotation. I think that's really been key for them. Pascal Siakam, I think, has done everything he's needed to do for Indiana in this series. I think it's been a really good Andrew Nembhard series on both ends of the floor. He's been able to mix in the shot making, which is fantastic, but the defense has stood out. I would probably like to see the Pacers get back to some of the focus they had defensively that was earlier in the series because they need to keep building on that. You know, my mind just goes to, outside of injuries, the story for the Bucks just felt like they are working, but they haven't been able to take anything off the table. You know, they did a really good job of switching in game one, and that kind of fell off the table in game two. They were in rotation a lot more. Switches were not as clean. They were getting beat. Game three, they tried to make adjustments, try to keep screens on one side, but now Indiana flows into a different action or a middle pick and roll. Is this a drop? Is this a switch? What are we doing? Now the Pacers are off to the races. The Bucks kept fighting. I mean, Chris Middleton's been giving everything he's had. Brook Lopez made it look like he was back in Brooklyn. We had Danilo Gallinari offense. Shout out to the Air Monarch squad.
There we go.
And they tried zone, tried a little bit of everything, but eventually you don't have a lot. I mean, think about it. That Bucks team shot 51%. Unfortunately, the Pacers shot 51% from three, making 22 threes. So I'm not a math person, but
less than ideal for the Milwaukee Bucks.
Seems to be a problem, but yeah. It's been fun to watch the Pacers kind of have that moment in Indiana. The crowd was rocking. Good stuff.
I feel for Milwaukee. Because, I think heading into the series, regardless of the health stuff, I felt like this was going to be a tough matchup for Milwaukee to begin with, even if you felt like they were going to win it if they were healthy. Stylistically, this didn't seem to be the best matchup for them. We've talked during the regular season as we were potting, hey, these Pacers Buzz games have been a lot of fun. Giannis has put up some video game numbers. The Pacers feel pretty comfortable just running against them. They just have athletes and guys willing to run in a way that Milwaukee just doesn't have on the roster. Or in the case of some of the younger guys, they just aren't cracking the rotation like that. Which, very quick hat tip to Andre Jackson Jr. That guy's been flying around the last two games. Hasn't always been good. We've seen some of the handsiness. We've seen some of the fouls. But at his best, flying in for rebounds, jumping the passing lanes, flying in for offensive rebounds, some of the drives from him, some timely corner threes. I'm glad that he's getting this burn. I think I tweeted out something similar. Like the fact that Andre and AJ Green are getting these reps, regardless of how the series ends, I think is important. As Milwaukee, off the top of my head, I'm not sure if they're a second favorite team. I think they're like close to it, but aren't there. But like with this build and with their pick situation, they have to find young guys that can contribute. So it does stink that Dame is out. We haven't seen Giannis yet. You mentioned Chris Middleton. I don't think he has a healthy ankle at this point. And so it does feel like just the war of attrition is starting to win with Milwaukee, in addition to Indiana just playing well. But it is important that some of these younger wings are getting reps, and I think they can factor into the rotation next year. So I appreciate that portion. But as you talked about Indiana being able to, or Milwaukee just not being able to contain Indiana and some of the struggles there, like the second side stuff has really been the fun for me. Because it's easy to kind of poke at ball inbound at high pick and roll, downhill swing shot. The funnier / more sad possessions is when Milwaukee executes their game plan. We keep this pick and roll on the sideline, help peels in early from the weak side. They don't have anything. They have to kick it out. They have to swing it. We reset. We switch this handoff. Okay, we're good. There's 11 on the clock. And then they just keep going, and they keep going, and they keep going. And I just feel like Indiana and OKC are such like fun comparisons in which stopping the first action isn't enough. Stopping the second action isn't enough. It's the third, it's the fourth, it's the fifth effort. And that just kind of breaks you after a while when you play at the kind of pace that Indiana does. Like one of the wilder numbers that I found this morning as I was prepping for the pod, well, two of them rather. Most efficient driving game for Indiana in game 4. 1.39 points per possession on any trip featuring a pacer drive. That's Tyrese getting downhill a little bit more. That's Andrew Nembhard. That's Aaron Nesmith sprinkling in some random drives. And then on possessions featuring a closeout attack. Also a series high for Indiana. 1.64 points per possession. It's essentially a guaranteed bucket. And like at a certain point, it's just personnel. Indy can spread you out. Also, they just have guys that are willing to get downhill, and they make quick decisions when they catch it when you're rotating on top of that. You don't really have the catch and hold sequences for Indiana like that. And so that's where I feel like some of the shot making for Milwaukee could slow things down. That's where Chris Middleton was super important in the game 3, and Milwaukee almost stole that one. That's where you saw some of the shot making from Chris Middleton in game 4, some of the post-ups for Brook Lopez, the random post-ups for Danilo Gallinari. But they're just missing a lot in terms of personnel and then just shots in certain stretches. You already mentioned like the Bucks shot over 50% in the game 4. But if Milwaukee is more efficient and they're getting more threes up and they're just playing faster, like you feel that as the game goes on. So it's a wild testament to Indiana. But I also do just kind of feel as a basketball fan, it would have been nice to see a healthier Chris or a now healthy Dame, or if we get Giannis at all. It's a bad matchup either way, but the fact that we just don't have those two guys now, we will see. Again, I haven't seen a Damian Lillard status update for game 5 yet. But if he is hobbled and or just can't go, like it's really tough for Milwaukee. So maybe it'd be less tough if Bobby Portis doesn't get himself thrown out like 7 minutes into the basketball game, which very quickly before he moved. I didn't love how quick the whistle was in game 4. Like Pascal scores a bucket and looks at Bucks player and gets teed up. Patrick Beverly with a too small. We got Patrick Beverly post-ups in this one, but Patrick Beverly a too small as he's going up the floor, and that's a tech. Like conceptually, I don't love that. Like let these dudes emote, etc. It was funny to watch the quick whistle in an effort to kind of quell things, make sure it doesn't get out of hand, and that almost immediately flowing into the Andrew Nembhard, Bobby Portis thing. It's just like, well, that's why the refs were quick on the whistle to try to avoid this, and it just did not matter. But actually, very quickly, how have you felt about Bobby Portis in this series?
I felt okay. I feel like the defense, it's been a little tough and tricky at times, just because is he switching? Is he at the level? Is he dropping back? Indiana's had fun with all 3 of those coverages. I like the idea of putting Bobby Portis on Pascal Siakam, let him use that energy in that way. And then they also, again, just put him back in action. So it's been tough. But I mean, they need him, especially with no Giannis. They need the potential for scoring. They need the threat. So yeah.
Okay. Figured I'd get your thoughts there. All right. Well, without further comment, we will now move to one of the 2-2 series that we have right now. A Game 3 win for the Dallas Mavericks over the Los Angeles Clippers, 101-90. And then a Game 4 win by the Clippers over the Mavericks, a 116-111 victory on Sunday. No Kawhi Leonard in the Game 4 for the Los Angeles Clippers. 5-point game after the Mavericks come back from down 31 in this basketball game, actually take a lead. The Clippers were able to regain the lead, some huge buckets for James Harden in particular in the fourth quarter of this one. I have been keeping my eyes on just the defensive game plans all series long with these two teams, particularly what are the Clippers doing against Kyrie? What are they doing against Luka Doncic? What is the cumulative effect of what they decide to do with either of those guys? And in the Game 4, watching them continue to kind of ramp things up with Luka Doncic and just throw literally everything at him. We'll go 2 on the ball here. Here's a drop possession. Here's a switch. Sprinkled in some more zone. We saw some zone in the Game 3, so we saw some in Game 4 as well. Watching them do their best to keep Luka off balance on top of, I'm just kind of concerned with how Luka's moving right now. Like, he talked about his knee after Game 3. In Game 4, it didn't feel like he was moving all that well, on top of foul trouble for him as well. And so it's like some of the fourth quarter buckets we saw from James Harden is him calling Luka Doncic into the action, getting the switch. Some of it is game plan stuff, let's funnel you inside, but ultimately it didn't feel like Luka was moving all that great. So I do wonder just where Luka is heading into the back half of this series. There's obviously the Kawhi Leonard question mark, but with Luka, I do wonder if the Clippers keep this up to where we just throw a bunch of things, because it felt like early on in the series, we're just going to settle in on the drop and we'll just ramp it up against Kyrie and see what happens. But as that's evolved as the series has gone on, I do wonder if Luka's health status changes that math at all, or if they just continue to throw a bunch of different things at him. Kyrie is looking more and more comfortable as the series goes on. I do wonder if we get more of a commit to putting 2 on the ball on him, or if the Clippers worry at all about some of the Dallas bigs being able to make plays out of that. And then with the Clippers in Game 4 in particular, no Kawhi again. They really played with some juice, particularly in that first half. A 26-point first half for Paul George, where the shot-making button was just on for him. A lot of jumpers. But more excitedly for me, as someone who has questioned the Clippers' rim pressure for what feels like the entirety of the Kawhi Leonard-Paul George era, very early in the first quarter, let's get a pin down and a curl for Paul George to get him downhill. It's like, you know what? Yes, do that. Do more of that. Let him put pressure on this Mavericks team. Let him get downhill. Let's get some easy ones. Then let's extend this out. But the shot making from Paul George was a lot of fun. And overall, them just getting into their stuff with some juice. Even if you're settling into a Zubac post up, let's get into it. Let's run something and get into it. If it is a high James Harden pick and roll, or if he wants to switch hunt, let's get into it with a little bit of timing. If we're going to get the ball to Paul George with him flowing with something off ball, let's do that. If it doesn't work, now we have more time to flow into something else. It felt like there was more of that in the Game 4. I don't think that's exclusively a no Kawhi thing, because even when Kawhi was healthy, and we talked about the Clippers during the regular season when they hit the hot stretch, part of the jump-off period was general comfort with the personnel. They're playing more games together. But also, let's get into this with some juice. Let's get into this with some pace, with some urgency. And I felt more of that, particularly in the first half with the Clippers. And I think if they're able to bottle that, they have some places to pick at with Dallas's defense. And for Dallas, again, like, you're getting a multitude of coverages for Luka. He hasn't shot well at all in this series. That could turn on his head quickly. So it's not like that. The Mavericks don't also have avenues to be better. I do have a question about the big man room, but I'll save that. I've talked a lot. What's popped for you over these last couple?
Let's just bounce off what you said right there. Let's talk about Luka and how the Clippers want to defend him. Over the course of this series, even starting in Game 1, the Clippers have wanted to have that versatility. They've wanted to show a drop. They've wanted to show a switch. They wanted to mix things up against Luka, try to work to keep him out of a rhythm. I think the biggest thing with this is as the series goes on, you see the Clippers start to defend with more conviction. You see the help that they showed in that first half, especially the rotations that they had behind. When you look at Luka in a drop, you're thinking, okay, he can get in the paint, he can score. You have to look at the help that the Clippers were showing behind, the late help the Clippers were showing, the fact that they were leaving people open. And hey, here's this pass, you can make it. And that ties back into the challenge for Dallas as far as trying to make the Clippers pay for what they do defensively. But they're throwing that in to just kind of disrupt them a little bit. And now you mix in a switch. Help is still being shown, but the lob isn't there. So now you have to go ahead and make these plays. With Luka, I think it's just going to come down to timely baskets, timely playmaking. Because we've seen the sequences where the Clippers defense has done what they're supposed to do. Terrence Mann's doing a heck of a job trying to navigate screens. We've also seen where the Clippers have cycled through a few coverages and Luka's been able to best them. Whether it's, okay, I got the step back. Now we hit the lob. We've seen that. It's just, can Luka find the rhythm? Can he find the aggression? And more importantly, can Dallas make the Clippers pay? If the Clippers are going to get in rotation, can you keep the advantage? Can you knock the shots down? Can you drive their closeouts? Can you make them sustain that defense that they showed in that game for? I think that's a big key right there. You just got to have Luka poke at it. Kyrie's been very good in this series. But you saw in that second half, we're just going to double you. But just outright double you. Not even just a trap. Like, we're just going to throw a double at you and see what happens. How much of that disrupts Kyrie's rhythm? Or is Kyrie scoring just kind of baked in? And now, okay, Luka scores more. Luka opens up the playmaking. And now we get a couple more guys to show up. PJ Washington. He has a big game. All of it feels different, right?
Yeah.
Even in the second half, Derrick Jones Jr., when he was driving, felt a little different. Gives a little momentum. So Dallas's path to victory is right there. I think defensively, they got to focus on making sure they keep the ball in front. For the Clippers, I think bouncing off what you said about playing with more movement and more juice. One, the drives from James Harden, so key for the Clippers. The scoring mindset, when he makes quick decisions, and he's able to attack before a defense can fully load up, very difficult to deal with. Getting Paul George off ball is always a good sign. One, usually tends to get him aggressive. Two, it gives the Clippers the movement they need anyways. And then once he gets going, you get into the drives. You spoke very eloquently about that. What I liked from the Clippers, you had some of these possessions where it was a James Harden pick and roll on one side. You probe, defense helps. Now you kick it to Paul George, and you have a second action. There was a flow to what they did. I saw Biggs flash into the elbow to get to more handoffs. That's a positive for the Clippers. Roll through your sets, roll through your offense. And if those two are going to have it going, and now Dallas has to send more attention to their actions, that could open things up for the Clippers. That's a big key. If you can get rotation, you can get more ball movement, you get more player movement, you can play outside of the play, that's a big win. But I really love the defense they played, man. Not just the mixing of the coverages, the timing on it, man. Like, Luka is also, the part of the reason why you have to shift these coverages. Luka is very good at moving your defense around. You don't know if it's going to be empty corner. You know if it's going to be middle pick and roll. You know if it's going to be a post up. Clippers have shown a little something different on all of those. I like the little things like, hey, Paul George, you go guard that Derek Lively real quick. Let him be a switch. Make sure you guard Maxi Kleber.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Russell Westbrook, Terrence Mann, you guys be screeners. We can get two on the ball. We can get a slip. We can open things up. So I think that's where it's like, okay. I think the tough part about the Clippers in the playoffs is the longer the series go, the more they believe in what they do and the more it can wear on you. So if you're Dallas, you got to hit your notes. Clippers, you got to hit your notes. But that's the fun of this series.
Mm-hmm. And I think just to your point about just the general wearing on teams or wearing on each other, like this is where it's an interesting break for both of these teams. Like they played on Sunday. They don't play again until Wednesday. So they get the extra game before the extra day, rather, before the game 5. What does that mean for Kawhi? What does that mean for Luka? Again, as he's dealing with the knee as well. Do we see Kawhi in game 5? And if so, I kind of circle back to how I felt after the game 2 or after the game 3. Like, what is the integration process going to look like for Kawhi? Are they able to find some of the regular season blend where, all right, we got everybody on the court, but now we can get into these Kawhi post-ups or these Kawhi ISOs with more juice. We can still maintain the same level of movement and tempo while also getting that guy to basketball. And also having that guy on the other end of the floor, where on any possession, Kawhi can take Luka, Kawhi can take Kawhi. We could put Kawhi can take Kyrie, excuse me. Like you mentioned, Paul George picking up Derek Lively, so you can turn those pick and rolls into a switch. Hey, let's put Kawhi on Derek Lively. It could get fun. It could get really fun. The question I had for you with Dallas, which center do you feel most comfortable with through 4 games of this series? Because I feel like all three, like the 3 of them bring something different. Like there's obviously some overlapping skills, particularly offensively with some of the roles. But who do you feel best about right now? I think we've seen what kind of, actually, I'll just let you answer the question first. Get into the whole thing.
Between who and who?
Lively, Gafford, Kleber.
Lively and Gafford for me.
Okay.
I feel fine. I think mainly it's because of their functionality and what they do on the other end. And you have a consistency. I think that the issue with Kleber at the 5 in this series is if the Clippers are going to drive and they're going to be able to attack a matchup, where's your size in the paint? You need the size in the paint. Now, it gets tricky if the Clippers are throwing different things out and throwing doubles. Now, Gafford's getting an early catch on a short roll, or Lively switches, they switch on Lively and the rolls aren't the same, but they're both tall and they're both around the rim and they're both lob threats. So even if you take away the quote unquote pick and roll, because you're helping, you're going to be in rotation, they're going to be able to slide and make a play. So I'd probably say just those 2, the bigs. That's a key part for Dallas and what they've had success-wise.
Okay. I'm right there with you, funny enough. Because I understand what Kleber can bring you, like as someone that can switch out, and then just offensively, you get some of the randomness with the 3-point shooting. Like he's just going to take threes that Lively and Gafford naturally will not. And some of the connector things that he can do on the perimeter more so than just the short roll stuff. But to your point, with the Clippers going small, particularly in that game 4, if you just don't have any resistance at the rim, like it does open up the drives for the Clippers in a way that I don't think the Mavericks are super comfortable with. And so I'm with you. I lean more towards the natural 5s. And I probably lean more Lively than Gafford, honestly, just because if you do get some of the super high short roll reads, like I probably trust Lively to make those more than I trust Gafford right now. I do want to see more of just, I guess, the Gafford Zubac, the Lively Zubac matchup, just to see how he holds up on some post-ups if we get those. Because again, earlier in the series, like we've just seen Zoo put Gafford underneath the basket. And so we will see, like if Lively can hold up and hold more minutes there. It wouldn't surprise me if Jason Kidd leans more on the Gafford Lively duo, not playing them together, but just those 2 being like your 48 minutes of center minutes, more so than Kleber in there. But I just wanted to poke your brain on that one because that was interesting for me in the game 4.
No, I feel it.
And you already mentioned Russ and Terrence Mann showing the short roll reads. Just wanted to give the quick hat tip to both of those guys defensively. Russ, some very loud plays on the other end of the floor. We leave those alone, but he is competing his tail off defensively. And Terrence Mann, the work that he's been able to do against Luka Doncic, or really whoever he's been tasked with guarding, has been very impactful for this Clippers group. So I wanted to give the hat tip there. Do you have any closing thoughts or questions on Clippers-Mavs for you?
Nope.
All righty then. We can transition on to the East. Talk about some Sunday fun. We already mentioned, again, the Candace Parker retirement coming during Knicks-Sixers, but 2 games since last time we chopped it up. The Sixers beating the Knicks 125-114 behind a 50-point game for Joel Embiid. In game 4 on Sunday, the Knicks with a 97-92 victory over the Sixers. Jalen Brunson with 47 points, a playoff career high, a Knicks franchise playoff record in scoring, 1 point higher than Bernard King back in 1984, but 47 points and 10 assists for Jalen Brunson. And I think for me, as the Knicks now have a 3-1 series lead, I would be a little bit worried. Not even a little bit. I would just be flat out worried if I was the Sixers about how comfortable Jalen Brunson looks now. And you started to see that in the game 3, where he finishes with 39. Wasn't an efficient 39, but you could just kind of see Jalen Brunson starting to poke at, okay, they want this guy to defend me. They're willing to switch these specific screens either on or off the ball. They're sending help from here. Let's move some things around. Let's get into some early drag screens. High on the wing. Let's see if I can get another wing switched on to me. Let's see if I can get Kyle Lowry switched on to me. Let me see if I can get Tobias Harris switched on to me. Now I can attack. Let's go middle pick and roll. Josh Hart, how about you cut through as this pick and roll is happening so Kyle Lowry won't just be at the nail? I know Joel Embiid's in a drop. I can get to these shots. And again, 47 points is just loud. But the comfort and the ease in which Jalen Brunson got to some of those mid-range shots in particular popped for me. And it felt like a continuation of some of the looks that he got in game 3. And I think the Sixers have been working all series long to make sure Jalen Brunson is not comfortable. We do not want him to establish any sort of rhythm. Anyone else. Until the anyone else portion, Josh Hart has continued to make big shots. Didn't make a lot of them in game 4, but overall in the series, he's made a lot of big relief shots. We've seen OG Anunoby sprinkle in some shots. Big double-double for him in the game 4. Miles McBride making shots. Like you just get it enough and you try to keep Jalen Brunson, under wraps. I don't think he's under wraps anymore. And if that's the case, combined with just the paint edge that the Knicks have had in the series, particularly on the offensive glass, I am worried about Philadelphia moving forward. I'm worried about Philadelphia in the game 5 and moving forward. I think Brunson's kind of out of the box right now.
It's the fear of the playoffs. And what Jalen Brunson did was very important. It took 34 shots. So if you're the Sixers, you're thinking, okay, maybe we could live with that. The issue is there's some offensive stuff they got to work on, but Jalen Brunson's not going to stop shooting. And the combination of Jalen Brunson feeling more comfortable getting to his spots, OG Anunoby, I thought had some really big buckets. There was a flow to it, a gutsy team effort from the Knicks. They played 7 guys darn near once Bogey went down. I think to build on your Brunson point, the give and take, the back and forth in this one has been the Sixers really working to take away his rhythm, take away his spots, kind of dictate his areas. In that game 4, he was very comfortable getting to his spots, especially if he had certain people navigating the action. So you mentioned Tobias Harris. I'll navigate. I know where the drop is. I'm going to get to my spot and make those shots. I thought the drives were key for Jalen Brunson in that game 4. A lot more physical on those drives, initiating a lot more contact. Finishing over Joel Embiid was important. Thought the Knicks did a good job just throwing a couple adjustments in there. Hey, let's set these high screens, high pick and roll. Isaiah Hartenstein, mix in a couple just step ups. Set it flat. Let Jalen Brunson choose whichever side he wants to go to. Jalen Brunson, why don't you set some screens off ball? Let's see if we can get you a switch there. They're denying and switching against you anyways. Let's see if we can get a different matchup and now get it back to you. And then also the Knicks didn't force the issue. You know, hey, if you don't have it, here, dribble hand off to OG. There's going to be space there. They're in a drop. Dribble hand off to Dante. There's going to be space there. They're in a drop. But because Jalen Brunson started cooking, they set those high pick and rolls. Now all of a sudden you see, oh, that's a late switch now. Now it's Joel Embiid one-on-one against Jalen Brunson in space. Interesting.
The freaking going to his right, hop off the left foot floater over Joel Embiid in that game, in the game 4 is ridiculous, but continue.
Nah, I mean, and they had some fun after that elbow. But I think that was the Knicks. Jalen Brunson brought that home. It was a huge win. You mentioned the concern of, hey, Jalen Brunson might be unlocked. That's totally worthy. The other side was this was probably the first game where it felt like the Knicks felt their best about defending Maxey and Embiid. Maxey, 8 of 21, 23 points. Embiid, 7 of 19, 27 points. And I thought one of the biggest things, the Knicks' effort on defense was great. They were rotating, they were flying around. The adjustment to put Josh Hart on Tyrese Maxey was a fun one for me. I think it was an important one. And I think that's the value for New York of having multiple defenders who can defend multiple positions. Josh Hart can navigate those screens which is still going to give Hartenstein the ability to be at the level or be dropped back and not have to maintain. Now you had OG Anunoby on the weak side able to rotate. Whether his man was on the corner or on the other side, they were working to pre-rotate to Embiid's pop a lot in that game. Mm-hmm. And OG was able to cause havoc wherever he was and rotate. And I thought their ability to fly around was huge. I wonder how much Embiid establishing the post-ups early both helped and hurt the Sixers in the sense that we had them going. We got some good looks. Knicks were kind of showing baseline help, kind of showing help from one pass away. Then they started to bring doubles. Then they kind of just leaned on it, especially in that fourth quarter where they went for it, Nekias. They swung for the fences. They did the thing. Mm-hmm. Joel Embiid, stay out there for the start of the fourth. There's always a flip side to that, folks. You have to win those minutes, or else, where do you go?
The stamina bar at 47 by the time you get to clutch time.
And I thought the work that OG did on Embiid was really good. I thought their double teams were very good. The timing they had, the rotations they had behind it, that's something Philadelphia has to work towards. But for Philadelphia, a lot of the actions you had in game 3, yeah, you had some tough shot making. You didn't put the same amount of pressure on the Knicks defense. Those are rotations they wanted to make. Those are rotations they knew they had to make because that's their choice they made. How much stuff did you leave on the table? Can you get that back? Because now it's an elimination game on the road in the Garden.
Yeah.
And so did you open up the window for that moment? But would you watch, you got to watch the activity of that Knicks defense. Precious Achiuwa, I thought, gave him some really good minutes defensively.
Yes.
I thought his rotations were really good.
What an effort from Precious Achiuwa coming off the bench. And you kind of go back to some of the Sixers-Knicks battles. Some of the Sixers-Raptors battles. With watching Embiid and watching Precious, or watching OG and watching Precious deal with Embiid, and just the cat and mouse game there. Are we sending a double with this? Or are we just going to try to get under him? So they naturally are smaller than Embiid, but watch that fight. So to watch that kind of carry over into a postseason battle, into this pivotal game 4, and watching some of the Precious efforts, watching OG take on the Embiid challenge in that game, like I just really enjoyed that. That was on the quick note I had on that front. But no, that was fun. To everything else you said, like I'm glad you brought up the Brunson drives. That was something that I had in my notes. 28 drives, 1.15 points per possession on any trip featuring a Brunson drive. Help present on roughly 61% of those drives, which is a series low. It had been above 80% in the first 3 games. So being able to get Brunson in space, again, it wasn't just pick and rolls or just handoffs. Sometimes it's let's get a matchup, and now y'all just clear out the way. Let's get you out of the way. Let's give Jalen Brunson just the right side to work with and let him boogie. He doesn't have to creep all the way to the rim. I can drive from the 3-point line to basically the paint or, just outside the restricted area. All of this is my wheelhouse. Now I can get comfortable shots here. So huge pop for Brunson and the drives. And I guess I would ask you, in regards to the Maxey Embiid 2-man game and the Knicks kind of flipping their matchups against it, is there anything you would like to see the Sixers do differently with that pairing, or is it just a matter of do it more, do it better in Game 5 moving forward?
Just trust it. Keep leaning on it. It's the one pressure point the Knicks really hadn't felt good about all series long. And you got them to a point where they're literally pre-rotating to the pop and rotating behind it. So you just have to keep that pressure on them. That's mainly the point for me. That was part of where I was like, okay, that's Philadelphia. Yeah, they got Brunson shooting this, but they have Maxey and Embiid who are making these shots and putting pressure on the Knicks, and that has value late in the fourth. And then in the fourth, you kind of go away from it. You don't necessarily have that same pressure. If you have a scenario where Embiid's able to get the bigs in foul trouble, now you're putting Brunson in action. And they ran double drag with Kyle Lowry and Joel Embiid for like a whole game 3, it felt like. Like they have to hit the pressure points with those two. And now make the Knicks react the way the Sixers want them to, as opposed to, well, hopefully this happens, or hopefully we make them pay.
I got you. And then just to put a number on this one, I mentioned the offensive rebounding and passing to kick off the segment. The New York Knicks, per cleaning the glass, led the NBA in offensive rebound rate, rebounding roughly 32.2% of their own misses. Their lowest single game number in the series so far is 32.1. 50.9 in game 1, 32.1 in game 2, 32.6 in game 3. Roughly 36% of their misses were rebounded in game 4. The Sixers just have not had an answer for insert Nick here crashing the offensive glass. And so it has to be frustrating to work as hard as you are to try to keep Brunson out of rhythm. And I mean, just primarily to keep Brunson out of rhythm. But you're trying to slow down the Knicks offense in general, and they're getting 2, 3, sometimes 4 cracks at it because you can't end the possession. And one of the things I asked when we were on the Old Man to 3 Things last week with JJ was how much will the rebounding factor into what they want to do with Embiid coverage-wise? Will they hold him back, deeper in the drop? If for no other reason, then we need a bigger body at the glass when the shot goes up. And we have seen more drop from Embiid as the series has gone on, but to that portion, it hasn't really helped that much. And it just feels like an edge that the Knicks are just going to have in this series. And so, to your point, circling back to the Maxey and Embiid thing, being able to hammer that home a little bit more, pulled it up very quickly, at least on the pick and roll front. No, I can pull up the handoff numbers as well. But 27 reps between the two in pick and roll in game 1, 21 in game 2, 15 in game 3, 13 in game 4, and also easily the least efficient game of the series for the Maxey Embiid pick and roll, a little over 0.4 points per possession, an awful number. So we'll see if the Sixers are able to get back to that as we head back to New York. Any closing thoughts or questions in Sixers?
No.
Sixers Knicks. Okay. Fair enough. We now move to a 2-2 series while we're still out east. The series doesn't start until the road team wins one. So I guess Cavs Magic has not started yet. Orlando getting their get back. A 121-83 win in game 3. A 112-89 win, in game 4. The series tied at 2 games apiece. The Orlando Magic made threes. That helps. If you're going to drill over 40% of your threes over this 2-game stand, that will certainly help your offense. But more than that, they ran, which is something that I've been clamoring for with the Magic. And Paolo and Franz are starting to look more comfortable. Paolo acquired a game 4 than he had in game 3, 31, 14, and 5 in that game 3, and he was aggressive very early in this one, in that game 3. But Paolo hitting you with 31 in game 3, and then Franz hitting you with 34 and 13 in game 4. 34 and 13, in game 4. You want to see your young guys show out because duh. So that was great. But beyond that, I did appreciate, I guess, a level of intention for Orlando's offense. Like one thing that I've been harping on with them was the screening in particular. We've seen more contact. We've seen them set lower. I feel like in game 4 in particular, Orlando did a better job of clearing out space for Franz to really unlock some of those drives. And once Franz started boogieing downhill, you got into some of the spot up threes. You got into some of the step back threes early in the clock, which process wise, I wasn't a fan of in real time. But it did just kind of speak to Franz is feeling good right now. And one of the things I kind of chuckled at heading into the game 4, or heading into the homestand for Orlando, honestly, was Orlando's offense doesn't look great. I think I said on the pod on Thursday, some version of Orlando's offense is just in a box right now. Cleveland doesn't care about what they got going on. There probably needs to be a lineup change, get Jonathan Isaac back to the bench, etc. And for that to kind of flip to this degree has been important for Orlando. But it was also just funny because during that stretch, Franz just quietly drilling 40% of his threes. It's a 2-game sample, but I've been wondering about the Franz jumper all year long, and now he's making shots, but Orlando can't score anyway. For him to have the loud performance in game 4, and for Orlando in general to find their offense, reconfigure their rotation. It hasn't been as loud on the box score for Wendell Carter Jr. since he's rejoined the starting lineup, but I have liked his work as a screener. I have liked some of the playmaking. He's helped Orlando go side to side. Defensively, not A+ stuff, but like I felt pretty solid about him in a drop. They played him a little bit higher, but still dropping back, trying to erase some of the space that some of the Cleveland guards were seeing. So I've enjoyed the Wendell inclusion. And ultimately, that's kind of reset their rotations to where the bench is really having a major impact. You've seen guys play better. Markelle Fultz has found himself in Orlando as a scorer. Cole Anthony wasn't as catch and holdy offensively, made some timely buckets. Jonathan Isaac, big explosion in game 4. in particular. But the second unit has just dinged Cleveland over these two games. 89-51 is the bench edge. It gave 3 in game 4. And that kind of swing was largely missing through the first 2 games. And so it's just more tempo, better screening for me. Paolo had a big game. Franz had a big game. It feels like Orlando was able to kind of recapture what made them so good. And Cleveland's offense is... they're going to need something from the guards. But I'll pause it right there. What stood out to you over this 2-game stretch for Orlando?
A lot of things stood out to me in this 2-game stretch in Orlando, Nekias. What I'll say is this is a very interesting Game 5 because both these teams have shown and established their path to success and their path to win. And it's Orlando to keep what they found at home going, and it's on Cleveland to put the pressure right back on them. Because you have to remember, Cleveland had done a really great job defensively in the series. Showed early help. They were flying around and rotating. They were willing to give up shots to protect the paint and sit on drives, working to bog the Magic down. Orlando found the right tempo offensively. They made quicker decisions. They got to driving quick. They took the shots the defense was giving them. Never forget in that game 3, they started 1 for 10.
Yeah.
But they were taking the shots that Cleveland was giving them. They were making quicker decisions. And defensively, the Orlando Magic, upped the pressure. They started to get the Cavaliers to start their sets later in the clock. They mixed in different schemes to try and keep them off balance. The biggest thing you said is Orlando ran. The biggest key for why Orlando's running is because Orlando's getting stops. If Orlando's getting stops, they can push up those stops. Now they get into a more natural flow. They work to make quick decisions. It's easier for them. So now on both ends of the floor, you have the battle of quick decisions from an offense against a defense that's working to show and help and rotate. I think for me, this is where it becomes interesting. Because you mentioned the Cleveland offense, right? Mm-hmm. I'll just go there. In game 4, Cleveland shot 55% in that first half.
Did not carry over the second half.
No, it didn't. But what does that tell you?
That they can do it.
Yeah. And so can you keep your tempo up? Can you keep your movement up? Can you continue to cycle through your options? They ran a lot of good stuff. It's been the story of the Cleveland Cavaliers all year long. But what is going to be the finisher for them? The bigs have done their job. Jared Allen's been great on the short roll. Evan Mobley, occasional misses. Perimeter's been but he's been aggressive and he's done what he's supposed to do.
He's been aggressive, yeah.
Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland are going to have to make the plays to make the Orlando Magic either adjust or not feel great about it. You've got more, you ran more movement sets for Max Strus, but you've got to stay committed to your vision. Darius Garland, if it's going to be a drop, he's going to have to make them pay. He's done a good job of trying to get in the paint and make some plays, but he has to score. He has to make them think about it. Because if it's now just Cole Anthony, full court pressure, and that's the bit, no disrespect, but that's tough to live with. They need the pull-ups from Donovan Mitchell. They need the decision-making once they get in the paint. They need that to take it over the top. So now they can sustain. They got to keep that up. But you mentioned the Orlando lineup change, right? Biggest thing is it allowed Jonathan Isaac to be Jonathan Isaac and guard as a perimeter player and defend on the weak side and rotate, help, and recover. That was key. That second unit, a lot of energy at home. Mo Wagner yelling at everybody for minutes and minutes on end.
What was he?
Franz Wagner also in the energy. If you're Cleveland, you're looking at Franz Wagner's box score and you're like, that can't be the bit. And so can we take him back off the table? Paolo had an incredible game 3. And the concern if you're Cleveland is, did he find everything he needed to? Game 4, a little quieter. But are we now in this position where Paolo is unlocked as a screener, as a ball handler, in post-ups? Can he attack matchups? What can we do to bring discomfort to them? Mm-hmm. And so that's where I think the real battle is going to be. Cleveland's got to do a better job of keeping the ball in front defensively. And Cleveland's got to do a better job of executing offensively. They got to believe and play with conviction on both ends of the floor. Because they've had success, But for your offense to fall off that quickly, remember it was 68-67 when Darius Garland and Jalen Suggs had the real hoop moment, and then Orlando went on a 23 run to end the quarter.
Yeah,
that was the game.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, I hate to be straightforward, but it's up to you. You go back home, you're either winning this one and putting the pressure right back on Orlando, or
you're going back to that madhouse.
You're in a tough spot. So hey, I think I expect the guards to play better. I think the bigs will hold up. We'll see if the defense remains, but the playoffs, it's a very small margin.
Mm-hmm. Very small margin indeed. And I just gotta go into, I believe you said this either on this pod or it may have been when we hopped on with Justin and Carter, that it just feels like for Cleveland, it has to be a Darius Garland series to a certain degree. Because we've seen, after the game one, the matchups are toggled right back. We're putting Jalen Suggs on Donovan Mitchell. Darius, you have Gary Harris, who's a solid defender, but he is not Jalen Suggs. I think that is a fair thing to say that wouldn't be disrespectful to any of the parties involved. If you're getting dropped, like you said, like he has to hit enough of those. And like more importantly, he has to take enough of those. So I think that's kind of what's gotten me with Darius in the series. And really it's just kind of been like a second half subplot as he's tried to get back acclimated and things. It's just been a weird offensive year for him overall. I am not selling any Garland stock or anything like that. I think he's really good and he's going to be great. But against this Orlando defense that is already good, you only have but so many pathways to really ding them to begin with. And if you pass up on some of those opportunities, either by getting off the ball early or just over penetrating and then trying to look for an outlet from there, like you're playing into Orlando's hands. And to your point, Steve, again, if Cleveland's playing super slow on top of this, you've missed the opportunity and now they're 7 on the clock against a set defense that is long and rangy. And at a certain point, like it's not fair to ask Jared Allen to save your possessions, who's been really good all series long as a scorer. If some of these bailout shots late in the clock are Evan Mobley jumpers, the jumper from Mobley's been a question all year long. I personally loved, and we both kind of alluded to it, we've loved that he's just taking them without hesitation. But ultimately, if we're talking about playoff game plans and what you can live with, if Evan Mobley is taking this jumper or he's taking this three instead of Donovan Mitchell getting downhill or Darius Garland getting to his floater or Max Strus coming off of an off-ball screen and stepping into something in rhythm, Orlando's going to take that 10 out of 10 times. And so it would be nice to see Darius really establish himself early and often because there's no question at all about the talent to do so. Even if it doesn't lead to like pure rim attempts and free throws, like that's a general Darius Garland thing. He should be able to own the space between like 8 and 23 feet. You'll have the pull up 3 opportunities and then you just have the pull up from the elbow or you have the floaters. Like he should be able to own that real estate to the point to where, okay, Wendell's got to play up higher. Or maybe we need to switch this too. And let's see what we can do and let's see if we can open up from there. Like with Donovan Mitchell, like I've enjoyed the defense from Jalen Suggs and they've thrown different things at Mitchell, but ultimately like it does feel more like Donovan is missing shots that he normally makes and like some of that shit turned around. The big issue, and this is very dull analysis, is that you have both of those things happening at once. You have Mitchell missing the shots and also Garland is either missing shots or he's passing up opportunities. And like that can't be the formula. And I wish I could remember who said the tweet because you're talking about Franz and looking at the box score there if you're Cleveland. I wish I could remember who sent out the tweet, but like Franz has outscored Donovan Mitchell in the series so far. Like that, I don't think that is something that Cleveland can live with. And they especially can't live with it if Darius Garland also doesn't have it going to kind of supplement that. So I'm curious to see what kind of pressure Cleveland's guards able to put on Orlando because like that can just flip the series right back to them.
Oh, do you feel the series is out of reach for Cleveland?
No. It's 2-2. Like I don't know. I don't think it's over at all. This is very much just me reading off of the last 2 games we saw. This is what it looked like, and Cleveland can't afford that because they lost those 2 games. Now, I don't think Cleveland's out of it at all. So, that's on me if I made it come off like, oh, Cleveland's just dead in the water at this point. But no, we are good. Again, another hat tip to the Orlando bench. I'm glad you mentioned Mo Wagner because I'm going to circle back and mention him as well. Is there a more naturally, if you're a defense, you don't want anybody to get off. Like, is there a more annoying role player to do good things or have good things happen against you than Mo Wagner?
No. Well, yeah,
I don't
there
think
is. Yeah, actually, yeah, there is. Insert role player in the playoffs.
Well, you know what? Touche. We'll let you have it. Last three series get to, these are the games that are happening on Monday night. So by the time you're able to listen to and or watch this, those game fours will be, or game fours in the case of OKC, New Orleans, and Miami, Boston, game 5 for Denver, LA. So that's why we are going to these last. But very quickly, a game 3 win for the Boston Celtics, 104-84 in that one. Jason Tatum with 22, 11, and 6. Jaylen Brown also with 22, 20, and 9 for Bam Adebayo. Quieter 15-point effort for Tyler Hero in this one. First thing I had in my notes for Miami, Boston, and I typed it out in the Google Doc as well as we were prepping for the show. Boston looked at Miami's game 2 shot profile and said, absolutely not. We are not letting that happen again. We recognize that we are a more talented and or healthier group than Miami is. One of their only pathways to victory outside of like injury stuff is them making more threes than we do and kind of winning the math. And Miami very much did that in game 2. In game 3, Boston just wasn't going to have it. 26 3-point attempts before we got to garbage time per cleaning the glass for Miami, 35 for Boston. Only 8 shots at the rim for Miami, 41 mid-range shots for Miami in that game 3. I think you felt it very early on with some of the Tyler Hero pick and rolls. We are not showing the same level of help that we showed in game 2. We're still going to rock with our bigs in a drop. Like, if you got Kristaps or if you have Al Horford, we're still very much going to have them in a drop. You better do your best to navigate this space, though. You better make every right decision you can. Because ultimately, we're not giving you the cheap help off the strong side corner. We're not helping super aggressively off of Caleb Martin or Jaime Jaquez, so you don't have easy kick-out reads from there. You got to hammer us here before we do something different. And ultimately, Miami wasn't able to do so. They drove a lot more in game 3 than they did in game 2. A series high 49 drives for Miami. Miami only generated 0.75 points per possession on those trips. Didn't have the same help outlets, didn't have the same finishing. And ultimately, without them being able to create the same level of looks as we saw in game 2, they just didn't have a chance to outpace Boston. And this is on top of Boston generally making quicker decisions offensively. They did a really good job of getting downhill. They were able to scramble Miami a little bit, and they were able to get back to some of their drive and kick game that we just didn't see a ton of, or at least we didn't see it consistently in game 2. And so it felt like a very easy fix. Feels disrespectful, but it was like a very predictable tweak. We helped a lot. We let shooters that we aren't super worried about all get comfortable. We're not going to help like that anymore. Let's see if you could beat us. And they largely were not able to do that in game 3. What stood out to you in the game 3?
Well, I think just to echo your sentiment, Miami has a path to victory. The tricky part is Boston knows that, so they have to work to take that away. I thought Boston's decision-making offensively was really good. Anytime that Boston has been able to get Miami to show 2 on the ball or not be clean on their defensive coverages has been a plus. Mm-hmm. I thought Jaylen Brown set the tone, looking to drive in that Tyler Hero matchup, as opposed to the game where, hey, we're fine, we'll stay at home. Tyler, contain it, contest it. Jaylen Brown tried to make that as uncomfortable as possible. But I thought they kept pressure on Miami's defense, which was important. Honestly, I thought Miami was still working. I mean, Boston still had, 14 points with 3:30 left in the first quarter? So the defensive effort was still working. That was a positive. The issue is that offensive side of the ball, the margin for error is so slim. And you mentioned the fact that Boston was working to stay at home. Hey, you got to make a play one-on-one. Is it going to be in the post? Is it Jaime? Is it Bam? Who's driving? Are you going to force us to help? That was the key difference. And then when you had the pockets against the drop or coming off a handoff, you have to knock down those shots. You see what happens when you don't knock down those shots. And now Boston's able to get into a flow, get into a rhythm. I mean, the one thing we've seen all series long, Boston has been ready for that zone from the Miami Heat. Jason Tatum, fine. Hey, where are you at? Is that you, Duncan Robinson? All right, I'm over here. Let's get me the ball. Or hey, let's get a pick and roll, and then let's get to going. I think a lot of it goes on to Tyler Hero. The shot making is important, but he also has to make the right reads. And if Boston is now mixing up the help with, hey, it's a drop, but now it's a stunt to try and take away your pocket, are you going to be able to find that? Are you going to take that shot? Are you feel comfortable taking that shot? Can we get the same Bam that was aggressive? I think that's the bit. But I think Boston knows, okay, that was a good win. Can you beat us a different way? Can you beat us if we're not in our own way, to a degree? I guess it might be their feeling.
Yeah, I think it's again, just looking at the talent / roster difference between the two, and again, factoring that Jimmy Butler is not available for Miami right now. Like, I think it's a fair thing to feel if you're Boston. If we do what we're supposed to do, like, we just have a much higher ceiling, we have a higher floor than you do. You have to walk a very specific line in order to beat us. And we also have to cooperate to a degree, to the help point. And they did not do that in game 3. And Boston was able to get another victory. And so for Miami, like, I don't think there are a ton of like scheme differences that they can sprinkle in. Kevin Love did say the game plan for game 4 is going to be much better. So I am very excited to watch that later and see what that means. Almost, we'll see if it works or if it doesn't, but I at least want to see what they're going to do differently. But, to your point, like, it's just going to be a matter of if Boston is going to help that way. Jaime just has to win his drives. Nikola Jovic has to win his drives. If Tyler Hero gets dropped, he has to be comfortable, depending on how high the screen is being set on the floor, walking right into pull-up threes when he has them, or walking right into those elbow jumpers when he has them. Like, I don't know if Tyler challenging Kristaps at the rim is the answer, but like the pockets that he has, he's going to have to take them. And I think it was Caleb Martin that said post-game, a lot of guys were passive, and he called himself passive, and that wasn't going to be the case in game 4. So, Boston didn't eliminate literally all of the catch-shoot opportunities for Miami, but Miami can't afford to have any of them right now while they're not healthy. Very quickly to your zone point, 14 zone possessions against Boston so far in the series, nearly 1.3 points per possession on those trips for Boston. Like, they have absolutely blitzed it so far.
No, and I think there's the key things you can see is you can see the difference for Miami when they are able to get Boston to show help on those drives, and it opens up the cutting and the kickouts, and the difference for Boston when they are able to get Miami to put 2 on the ball or slip up on their coverage, and what that opens up for them. They may play after play after play, so that feels like the battle right now, and it's just on Miami to show they can do that portion to stay in the series.
There you go. And then just very quickly on the Miami front, just who's going to be available. Saw the tweet earlier. DeLon Wright is going to be back. He did not play in game 3. Missed game 3 due to the birth of his daughter. So congratulations to him and his family. DeLon Wright back in game 4. We will see what kind of impact he has. Moving to the West for the last 2, the Thunder with a 106-85 victory over the New Orleans Pelicans. They have a 3-0 lead right now. 24-5-8-4 for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in that game. 21-9-5 for Jalen Williams. A good game in his own right. A very good game considering I didn't know if he was going to be back after taking the strike early in the first quarter there. It looked scary, but came back. 21-9-5 for him. 21-8-6 for Josh Giddey, biggest offensive game of the series so far for him. Quiet offensively for Chet, but his presence caused problems. 8 rebounds, 4 blocks, one of the better rim protecting games I've seen in the postseason so far. 16 for CJ, 19 for Brandon Ingram, 15 for Herb Jones, 9, 13, and 5 for Larry Nance Jr. off the bench in 29 minutes there. Only 12 minutes for Jonas Valanciunas in game 3. Did not play in the second half. I'm going to be honest with you, Steve. I've just kind of reached the what does New Orleans do portion of the program. Because it just feels like we are dealing with a team that is just better before factoring in the Pelicans haven't had Zion all series and won't have him for the game 4. But ultimately, it just feels like the Thunder have dinged just about everything the Pelicans have tried to do. They have had some sort of counter for everything the Pelicans have tried to throw at them. And once you reach that point while also being at a talent / health deficit, I don't know where you go from here if you're New Orleans. Like, I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been able to find pockets. Jalen Williams has won his drives. The pick and pops with either Shai and Chet or Jalen and Chet, which has been, the higher volume combo of the two, especially since JV has still largely been on Chet Holmgren. They've been able to find shots out of that. Anytime New Orleans tries to load up, either with just their basic pre-rotation or if they want to get fancier with who they want closing out to Chet on the pop, OKC's able to counter either with cuts or how about we just space this initial pick and roll in a certain way because we know this rotation's coming. Now it is Jalen. Now if Chet, if Jalen isn't running the pick and roll, now it's Jalen against someone you don't want guarding him. Or if Jalen's running the pick and roll, well, now it's Shai against someone you don't want guarding him. And they're able to play out of that. And on the other end of the floor, like CJ hasn't made enough shots from the perimeter to really break or, to really bend OKC's defense. Lou Dort has done one heck of a job with Brandon Ingram. And more than anything, and I was thinking about this earlier today, even when Brandon Ingram has gotten to the spots that he likes, those are shots I think OKC is ultimately okay with him taking. As cool as it is to see Brandon Ingram either just walk up into a post up or get sliced into like the mid post area against Lou Dort, he's taller than him, he has more length, etc. If I'm able to get a pick and pop on one end and create a bunch of threes, and on the other end, it is Brandon Ingram shooting over Lou Dort from 17 feet, I'm kind of taking that. And through 3 games of the series, like it doesn't feel like New Orleans has done enough to poke at OKC's defense. We haven't seen enough shots being made to where OKC feels the need to send extra doubles or send doubles or send help a little bit more aggressively when New Orleans tries to set something up. Like I feel like through 3, JV was probably the closest person to getting to that. And even then, you're talking about JV post-ups versus whatever Shai or Jalen are creating on the other end. And so I just kind of feel for New Orleans. But I've been really impressed with OKC so far. And the game 3 was no different.
Well, if you're New Orleans, you win one. Extend it, see where you can go. The biggest thing is it's a tough matchup. I think the moments and pockets that we've seen, game 1, game 2, game 3, where New Orleans is active defensively, they are getting stops. Those are not automatically converting into buckets. So you find yourself in a 11-11 battle or in a 7-5 battle where maybe you could have a 6-point lead if you're getting transition buckets, you're able to sustain offensively. Defensively, New Orleans is a team that is working to find the matchup for Shai, working to find the matchup for Jalen Williams. But just philosophy-wise, it's tough because of what OKC does. They make you keep guarding. They will always drive. They will always cut. So as soon as New Orleans settles in on their help, it becomes an issue because now there's a cut from the weak side. The help is not the same. Now there's a pop. Now they're moving the needle. Now Lou Dort is hitting threes. Now Casey Wallace is screening, guard screens. So they just keep New Orleans off balance so much. And that's where you credit. And then you have on top of that the shot making. Shai's taking and making a bunch of tough shots. Jalen Williams is taking and making a bunch of tough shots. It's a hard blend. But I think if you're New Orleans, you just got to keep fighting defensively. Brandon Ingram, he's found success in some of those little mini post-ups, elbow catches, off-ball actions. And what's it look like if we can get CJ and Trey Murphy to make some shots? Can we sustain some offense and give ourselves a good shot?
2 plays burned in my brain from that game 3 is New Orleans 22.5 seconds of really good defense. Brandon Ingram just mirroring Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as best as he can. Shai step back 3 from the left wing, cashes it. And then I think a little bit earlier in the game, it's just a transition opportunity, and Josh Giddey goes behind his back into a Euro step. And at both of those moments, I felt, you know what, New Orleans, we will see y'all next year. Like that is incredibly tough. One question I had for you though, because I think it was Willie Green said post game after game 3, they may be looking to put more shooting into the lineup. Just general, like, do you think that is a potential starting lineup change, or do you feel like that's just more we will bring like Matt or Jordan Hawkins off the bench, and then we'll just see them in the lineup in earnest or in the rotation in earnest?
I think it's just rotation.
Okay. All right. Because I was just trying to think, like, what does that even look like? I mean, like based on again, like what we saw with the minute split with Nance and JV, it feels like the 5 minutes are the ones that are more likely to be played with, if anything. And so I guess wherever, if it is Jordan Hawkins in particular, like I think that's where a lot of those minutes are going to come from. Or actually, while I'm thinking about it, how much of Jose do you think we see in Game 4?
I imagine he'll get a stretch. Either we need defense and energy at some point.
Mm-hmm. Okay, because he also just has not had a successful offensive series. We will frame it that way in the interest of time. I wonder if that's where some of the minutes get pulled from. Because I think Najee's been a really important gap filler for them coming off the bench. They just need his size in general if they're going to be switching a bunch against OKC. So I'd imagine the 5 minutes, or maybe it's Jose just because of the size. Or maybe Dyson, who we've seen a little bit of him. But we will see. Best of luck, New Orleans. And by the time this podcast releases, that series will be over, or New Orleans had found something to extend things. Last one on the docket. Couple of games between the Denver Nuggets and the Los Angeles Lakers. A 112-105 victory for the Denver Nuggets in Game 3. A 119-108 win for the Los Angeles Lakers in Game 4. Nuggets lead the series 3-1. The very long losing streak is over for the Los Angeles Lakers. So you get the hat tip there. I'm just glad they were able to put 4 quarters together. And actually, I do want to take this time, because I don't know, again, by the time this is released, like the series may be over. I do just want to really quickly give a hat tip to Anthony Davis, because that man has been incredible in this series on both ends. There have been a couple of quiet fourth quarters in terms of the scoring, but like defensively, he has fought all series long. And offensively, even once you factor in some of those fourth quarters, he's knocked down jumpers. The post-up attacks have been forceful and decisive. And he's just putting a lot of pressure on the Denver Nuggets defense. And as I think about the Lakers more broadly, like the one thing they've been able to consistently do, even with them being down 3-1, like they go to this play where they give it to Anthony Davis, and then they have D'Angelo Russell screening for LeBron, flowing into a handoff. They've been able to get Jokic up to the level just about every time. And they've been able to carve out something good just about every time they've gone to that. It's like very granular, like single play thing. But like they've been able to find some stuff. But either way, I've really appreciated the effort Anthony Davis has given on both ends of the floor. And this has been just a really good season for him overall. Like I know he's not a Defensive Player of the Year finalist. And we've kind of talked through more so on JJ's pod than this one. But, you know, some of the numbers that reflect poorly on AD in his case, but it really isn't his fault if you watch. Like, I think that kind of hinders things. But like, I just a salute to Anthony Davis in case the season does end for the Lakers. And obviously what LeBron's doing at age 39 is insane. So I wanted to get some hat tips there. But overall, like I think the Lakers were able to continue to find good things offensively. You got production from both Austin Reeves. Well, you got production from Austin Reeves in the game 4, excuse me. D'Angelo Russell was able to bounce back from a scoreless game 3, which was, if we be respectfully, messy for like 8 seconds. It's at least a little bit funny to have the scoring surge in game 2 and say some variation of, yeah, I'm gonna make shots again too, and then go scoreless. Like I got a chuckle out of that as someone, the neutral observer here. But to see him bounce back, the Lakers finally got the game where both of the backcourt members showed up on top of AD and LeBron, and that felt huge. And for the Nuggets, talked about it on the Old Man to 3 things, but like I just did not like the way that they came out in game 4. It just felt really slow tempo-wise. And like they have the luxury of doing that just because they have Jokic, they have Murray, they have so many built-in things that they go to. So even if they start a possession late, they can just generate a really good look because of the synergy that they have. It just felt like they leaned a little bit too much on that in game 4. And they've had slow starts pretty much this entire series. So it's not necessarily new, but it feels louder since they weren't able to have the ridiculous shot making in the third quarter or the ridiculous shot making in the fourth quarter to override, you know, the hole that they dug themselves or that the Lakers helped put them in. So like, looking ahead to game 5, I just want to see what kind of urgency the Nuggets come out with. I want to see how quickly they're getting to their offense because I don't have questions about can they generate good things against the Lakers. We've talked about this throughout the series when it was 2-0, when it was 3-0. the Nuggets can just poke at things when they want to. They have Jokic at the free throw line in their back pocket whenever they want to. They know how the Lakers are sending double teams. So, like, I don't have concerns about can they generate good looks. I would just like to see a little bit more timeliness with which they do so.
We'll see if the Lakers can do it again. They have a template. They've shown it. It's going to be on D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves to make plays. I think with Denver, they've been a machine all year long. It'll be interesting to see what goes on with Jamal Murray. But I anticipate being at home could change things. And we'll see if they get back to some of that machine-like quality. They get the tempo back up. They look to attack. It just felt like they didn't have it on either end. The defense felt late. A lot of rotations, gave up a lot of drives. Offensively, found it, but it was a little slower than usual. So I imagine those should be a heightened sense of urgency, especially if Jamal Murray's unable to play. But it's on the Lakers to do it. You know, they've shown that they can compete. They need to win. Denver needs to go ahead and try and work to put them away.
There you go. And again, echo Steve's sentiments. Hope Jamal Murray's okay, dealing with a calf strain. Listed as questionable before the game. Again, as we close things up at around 3:30 Eastern on Monday. Don't know if he's going to play. I haven't seen a tweet or anything. I don't have Twitter open right now. So we hope Jamal Murray's okay. And with that, well, first, any closing thoughts?
No.
Before we head out of here. All righty, fair enough. Well then, thank you for listening to and or watching this episode of The Dunker Spot. If you haven't already, please subscribe to us. We are on Apple, Spotify, RIP Google at this point, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us. If you're watching this on JJ Reddit's YouTube channel, we are here every Tuesday. That's the day after Monday, the day before Wednesday. So if you like the visual element, plays spliced in, things of that nature, subscribe to JJ Reddit's YouTube channel. Catch us here every Tuesday. And in general, lots of great content dropping on the channel throughout the week. So you want to be locked in for that. You can follow me on Twitter at Nekias NBA. You can follow Steve on Twitter at SteveJones20. Join the Dunker Spot community. We're having fun discussions in there. You're also getting all kinds of memes that are flowing from the Dunker Spot watch party, which serves as a reminder for me to tell you, join and come watch some basketball with us with the Dunker Spot watch party. Link your League Pass account. It's free to create a profile. Come rock with us. We're breaking down plays during commercial breaks and during timeouts. So if you want to watch basketball in a deeper way or just second screen us so you can catch the play breakdowns at the very least, the link to the room is in the podcast description. So click on that. Once again, free to create your profile. Come have some fun with us. A lot of hoop, a lot of fun. Ultimately, you can really let your hair down. We talk a whole lot of food talk, job talk, relationship talk. We laugh at all kinds of things. So we'll frame it like that. It's a really fun place to be in. So come rock with us if you'd like. With that being said, we will catch y'all on Thursday.
Bye.